Am I the asshole stories? Am I the a-hole? For urging my brother to get a paternity test and causing a breakup? My 30F brothers, 29 meters, and girlfriend, 27F, got back together after 4 months of being broken up. He called me all excited to announce the pregnancy after their first ultrasound. I was apprehensive because they did have a long break. They've tried for a kid before they broke up but she never got pregnant, and I thought she got pregnant quickly. I asked if she's been with anyone else or if she would run back to him to father another person's child. He didn't think so, but was admittingly confused about how she was 14 weeks along when they got back together 13 weeks prior. I figured it was the first day of her last period, but I kept that to myself because I wanted him to get a paternity test. He brought his concerns up to her and she said that the first day of her last period was a week before they got back together and they based the due date on that, which I did corroborate. She also said if he wants a paternity test, it's fine, but it would result in them breaking up due to lack of trust. He didn't want to get one after their talk, but I told him that she's using a manipulation tactic, she's bluffing and she's probably hiding something. He ended up getting a paternity test done, and found out he's the father to their child. He was crying when he found out because she had broken up with him before getting the test and he was regretting getting it done. I texted her trying to plead with her about why the test was necessary to get in, that she shouldn't hold it against him. That even I gave one to my daughter's father because it's hard for men to not have definite proof. I also tried to tell her how hard it was for me to be a single mother and asked her if she was sure she was willing to go through that and put her child through that. She told me to F off, that I should have never gotten involved in to save the manipulation for my brother and anyone else stupid enough to listen to me. I didn't respond because I thought that was really rude, and brought it up to my sisters later that day. My sisters said he's an a-hole for not heeding her warning because we all knew they broke up due to trust issues, but I'm the bigger a-hole for pushing the idea onto him because he wouldn't have gotten one if it weren't for me. All of them agreed they would have left their so's if they were in her shoes, and think I pushed the idea because I'm malicious and don't like her, but I was just trying to look out for my brother. I'm starting to wonder if I'm tough for not trusting his girlfriend because others have chimed in saying I am while some defend my actions. I really didn't think I was because they had been broken up for a while and I don't think giving into paternity tests is a big deal. AITA. You should not have gotten involved like that. You put doubt into a mind that didn't have doubt, and now put your brother at risk for not being able to have a relationship with his kid if this backfires more. Also, if someone is considered 14 weeks, they likely did the deed to conceive only 12 weeks prior due to the gap between last menstrual period and ovulation. It sounds like you have had a kid and should know that she got pregnant while they were back together. AITA for the following reasons. 1. Initially intentionally withholding information you knew might help him understand a timeline specifically because you wanted him to get a paternity test and knew it would ramp up his anxiety on the subject. 2. Continuing to encourage him to distrust her even though the math indicates she conceived during their relationship and there's been zero evidence that she's ever cheated, per comments, or otherwise behaved in an untrustworthy way, per commands. 3. Continuing to push the issue after he said he decided against it. 4. Telling him that the only reason a woman whose partner has repeatedly indicated they distrust her for no reason would ever be disinterested in a paternity test is if they were hiding something, leading him to believe the odds of the child not being his are much higher than reality. 5. Intentionally gave him the impression that his girlfriend's explicitly stated boundary was a false one, leading him to believe that the odds of a negative outcome of forcing the paternity test were significantly lower than reality. In short, you decided that your priority, paternity test, was more important than his priority, intact relationship, and then set out to create an environment in which your preferred outcome was most likely by using your brother's trust issues against him. AITA. None of this was your business. At all. It was your brother's business strictly. And now you've caused drama and discord with his new family. You do realize now she's not gonna trust any of you, alright? Including him as the father. You should have kept yourself out of it. You can express concerns, but you pushed him into making a rash decision that caused him a relationship with his child's mother. Do you know how much shit he has to go through now to see his kid? Fathers have a lot of shit they gotta go through when they aren't married to the baby's mother. You fucked up big time. He's gonna have to potentially take her to court for visitation and custody agreements if his baby's mother shows us to go that route since she feels there's no trust. She wasn't trying to be shady with the pregnancy, she took the test on the week of her last period, which was a week late, so the dates add up. You need to majorly apologize to both of them if they allow it. So messed up. It's not your pregnancy or relationship. You had no right to meddle. Now for the next story. Am I the a-hole for not showing pity to my ex for catching an STD? So from the title alone, I'm sure you think I'm a super, mega, ultra asshole, but hopefully I can talk you over to my side. See, I was in an open relationship with a woman. I had never been in an open relationship before, so going into it, I was really uncomfortable and I was very verbal about it, but she didn't seem to listen nor care. She was very pushy about it, and despite my protests, I finally caved and accepted it. This only went on for about 6 months of our 1-year relationship, and in that time, especially the last 3 or so months, the only thing keeping me around were her kids, who I cared for deeply. After the split came, to nobody's surprise, I still wanted to be a father figure to her kids, and she was fine with it, as long as I wasn't uncomfortable with the very real possibility that she would have a friend, code word for internet hookup, over while I was spending time with the kids. I told her that's fine, but because of the frequency this was happening, she should use protection, but I was met with pushback and was told I was meddling. Eventually, I found someone else, started a relationship, had less and less time for the kids, and, after some serious self-deliberation, decided that the arguments and drama with the kids' mother was too draining, and, while it pained me to do so, I decided to move forward and focus on the future instead of the past. Fast forward, it's been almost 2 years since then. In that time, I've had to reach out to her here and there for relatively minor things. We live together, some property or important documents typically end up in the wrong hands. Recently, when talking to her about some documentation of hers I had gotten by mistake, she vented to me that she had been meeting random men online and she had caught HSV2, aka herpes. I simply said that sucks, and moved on with the conversation. To say she was furious was an understatement. She lashed out, scolding me for not giving her sympathy or pity. I told her she's an adult and explained that when I tried to initially give her advice she told me I was meddling, so I backed off. She continued to berate me and argue with me until, eventually, I just ignored her. So, NTA for how you reacted, but generally UTA for everything else. Lacking the spine to walk away from a type of relationship you don't want. Implying you're a victim who was forced to stay in an open relationship. Cultivating a father figure relationship with her kids, only to dump them when it was no longer convenient for you. Making this validation post. NTA, you warned her of the consequences as you cared for her even though the relationship had over and she brushed you off and accused you of overstepping. Fast forward, the consequences caught up to her. Instead of rubbing it to her you just treated as a simple news and she now accused of not showing pity. What kind of logic is this? If she wants sympathy, she shouldn't have pushed people who cares for her away. Not for the issue you asked about, but for dumping those kids for your new relationship. If you had left them right after the breakup with their mother that would be okay. But you claim to have been attached to them. Which is obviously untrue. Because if you were attached you would have never left. You assumed a parental role independent of your relationship with the mother, post-breakup. It was so wrong of you to abandon them. If you were never attached or broke the attached right after the breakup, who would get an NTA ruling. Now for the next story. Am I the a-hole? For how I responded to a woman's critique of my favorite authors? I'm a 17-year-old guy and I love to read. This summer alone I've read probably a dozen books and had fun with each of them. I've spent some time at the public library this summer either to just hang out, I extremely enjoy the peace and quiet a library provides, or to find new book. Today I was sitting at one of the tables after picking out Pet Sematary, that's how the title is spelled, and sat at a table with a pile of other books and began to read when eventually these two girls came up and asked if they could sit at the table and I said sure. So they sit for a while and each read their own books while quietly chatting with each other before asking me what I was reading. I told them and one of them asked, "Oh, Stephen King, right?" I said yeah and quickly expressed my love for his work. The other girl pointed to my pile of books and asked what the collections consisted of and I went through the line. It was a few more King books, J.R.R. Tolkien, George Orwell, and Roald Dahl's Charlie and the Chocolate Factory since I've only ever seen the movie. The second girl snorted and said, "So, just a bunch of old white dudes?" To which they both laughed. I chuckled before saying back jokingly, "Well, I'm yet to find a female author who's written anything as sophisticated as James and the Giant Peach." Before chuckling at my own joke. They both went quiet before the first one said, "Did you really just say that?" I asked what the problem was as they quickly packed up to leave. She looked at me and said, "You really think women are so incompetent that they can only write children's books? Fuck you." I was a little bewildered and soon left after them. When I told this story to my friend group's group chat, they all said that they were just psychos and to ignore them, except for a couple of the girls who said that what I said was actually pretty shitty, and they said I compared the work of women in writing careers to shitty children's books. Now I don't know if what I said was just a misinterpreted joke or if what I did was actually mean or if those two just don't know how to take a joke. So Reddit, AITA? Added to clarify, my comment was in no way, shape, or form meant maliciously. It was a quickly thought up, jab back at them in defense of my selection of authors. I am not saying nor will I ever say that people can't be good at something because of their gender. As a matter of fact, the book, To Kill a Mockingbird, is without a doubt my favorite book. Harper Lee's work in that book alone outperforms every single one of those other authors' books combined. Except for 1984. That is an extremely close second. Info: you said you had a pile of books next to you, and that it included a few more King books, J.R.R. Tolkien, George Orwell, and Roald Dahl's Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. King and Tolkien are gonna be some long-ass books to read. I'm a fast reader, but having a stack of books that big while reading at the library is ridiculous. I know it's dumb of me to be hung up on this little detail, but I'd almost call you TA for having those books stacked up next to you, and therefore not available for others who'd want to read/check them out, when there's no chance in hell you're gonna be able to finish all of them in a single day at the library. Jesus Christ. I was looking at Op's profile to search for his comments in this thread, and there's a whole rabbit hole of misogyny in his history. Plus he said that it's so easy being black in America. Greater than I chuckled before saying back jokingly, well, I'm yet to find a female author who's written anything as sophisticated as James and the Giant Peach. Yeah, this was not an appropriate response. It definitely sounds misogynistic and malicious. You meant it as a joke, but unless you're with an audience that already knows you're not sexist, it's a really bad idea to make a joke that basically amounts to I said something sexist, but ironically, lol. Based on your reading list and the way you talk up To Kill a Mockingbird, it sounds like you're a particular fan of classics. I think it's your responsibility, if you want to be an aware reader, to understand that the reason that most of the classics are written by old white men is a symptom of the misogyny the literature world is built on from the very beginning, and take specific effort to seek out women and POC writers as well as the top 100 classic writers who were all white men, because women and POC were still fighting to get the vote, and to get reproductive freedom, to be able to hold careers the same as white men, when a lot of the classics were being written. There's a lot of really amazing literature that hasn't gotten the same attention as those top 100 classic writers who really have amazing work that's worth your time. And I'm not just talking Harper Lee. And yes, these high school girls didn't exactly point that out like I'm doing so right now, but this is absolutely something any girl who is into literature would likely have noticed by that age and started to have feelings about. It's really difficult trying to love literature, to love studying literature, when you don't see your own experiences in what people are calling classic and universal. I'll be honest, as classic a piece as 1984 was, it was really hard to get through because the POV character was really fucking sexist. I read it in high school when I was a lot less aware of the line between author and character, so I can't comment on whether I think the sexism was interwoven intentionally as part of some sort of theme about it being bad or if it was unintentional because Orwell himself held those sorts of views. But I will point out I don't remember Winston's sexist views ever being properly challenged by the narrative at all, and it was literally painful to read as a 17-year-old girl. Like, I really don't think it belongs in pre-university school curriculums because of the way Winston as a character is super misogynistic, and the only woman who he has any positive views on at all is defined more as a body object than as a person herself. It was really demoralizing to read a protagonist literally thinking about how much he hates women, and wants to rape a woman. As a 17-year-old girl. I don't mean to make this into a rant about 1984 specifically, but I just find it really funny to find it on the list of books involved in such a dispute when it was this particular book that personally spawned my own hatred of the white male author because I was forced to read it as a teen, and the sexism of its narrator was quite next level compared to the more subtle forms of sexism reflected in other work that I'd studied at that level. Anyways, I hope that made you think a little, even if it didn't really contribute to the judgment. Haha. AITA, ESH with a lean on you being more TA. They shouldn't have criticized a virtual stranger's favorite authors even in a joke, but your response implies that you've read a ton of books and have found no female authors up to par with them. Both were on the same level of petty, but yours had more aggression to it because of society's view of women being baby makers and only being good with children, and that's about it. So not your intent to draw attention to that, but as someone who gets that sort of logic a lot, women are going to notice the underhandedness of the comment more. Plus you're strangers, and it's wild to me that you'd even consider making jokes like that with people you didn't know the level of comfort. Now for the next story. Am I the a-hole for reacting badly on my sill when my nephew called me dad? I'm 29 meters, not sure if I maybe overreacted in this situation, but here it goes. My brother passed away in a boat accident, and sometime after that my sill, his wife, found out she was pregnant with their first child. It was hard for her navigating her grief while pregnant, dealing with the fact that my brother will never know his son, and on top of all that the reality of now being a single mom. My parents live in another country and she doesn't talk to her folks much. So I started coming around a lot while she was pregnant. Bring her food, help with baby stuff and such. I was grieving too and needed the company. And it felt good knowing that I was helping out. After my nephew Charlie was born, I've been around way more. He's become the most important person in my life and I love him. Still help out my Sil with whatever she needs for him. Clothes, money, toys, baby food, you name it. Charlie's over a year old and he's already talking. One that obviously caught me by surprise is when he said Dada to me when I came over yesterday morning. And I corrected him saying no uncle. But don't know, guess he was stubborn. I confronted my Sil on it. She says they were reading a book together and he got it in his head that I'm his Dada. Not sure about that, but throughout the rest of the visit he'd keep calling me that and it would twist something in me. And Sil wasn't doing anything to correct him. In fact, she'd encourage it. After she put him down for a nap, she asked me what's so wrong about him calling me that, and I sort of lost my temper. Didn't yell or anything, but what I said was because I'm not his dad and I'm not gonna disrespect my brother like that, so why should you? My Sil looked like she wanted to cry and I decided to end the visit there. On my drive back I got a text from her. She told me sorry for thinking I'd feel happy he'd call me that and she'll make sure he won't do it again. That I just didn't have to be mean by throwing the death of my brother at her face. I've had some time to think. It was an emotional moment for me, so I'm not sure if maybe that way I reacted made me an asshole. Especially because I made her cry. Nah. I think you reacted harshly, but it was a reaction, and that's how it be. These situations are hard because you have filled the father role for this child and your Sil seems to just want this kid to feel like he has a dad. Usually the first word most babies say is Dada. For some reason mama is harder. At that age they don't have the capacity to know a name goes with a certain person. I wouldn't worry about your nephew calling you Dada forever. What you should be worried about is your Sil developing romantic feelings for you. She's lonely and you are there often, helping her out and spending time with your nephew. Actually, it's kinda of, I don't know if natural is the right word, but it's happened for hundreds, if not thousands of years. In some ways you probably remind her of your brother, and when you have been used to being with another person for a long time and then you lose them and then your pain becomes more manageable and someone starts helping you and caring about you and loves your child, you can find your heart starts working again. Having to take care of a child when your heart has been shattered, kinda keeps you from feeling the pain. You shelve it and tell yourself that you will deal with it later. You, needed comfort and needed contact with your brother, and your Sil needed all that too. I don't know what your feelings towards her are. Just be aware of the situation. You did talk sort of harshly, but you made your point. But NTA. I am so sorry for your loss and the pain you are in. I could tell you that it gets better with time, but you won't believe it right now. Wishing you comfort and peace in your heart. NTA. I'm so sorry for your loss. And, I understand where you are coming from. Of course, you want to honor your brother and make sure your nephew knows he had a father who would love him with all his heart if he were here. It's not your brother's fault he is not in his son's life, and I know you want to respect that. By my calculations, your brother passed away about 2 years ago, so your loss is still fresh. It takes a long time to achieve the new normal after a tragic death such as your brother's. My own brother was killed 20 years ago, so I have an idea of what you are going through. I also understand what your Sil was trying to do, however misguided. Just as you are emotional, so is she. It sounds like she had good intentions in the beginning. However, once you told her how you felt, it was wrong of her to try to lay a guilt trip on you. I hope you two can work through this. It sounds like you have a good relationship, and both want what's best for Charlie, so I'm sure you can talk this through and move on.